are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen to them? About 18% of American teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late-stage alcoholics who were elderly. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs. So what's causing this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. First, and the worst, is ultra-processed food. About 70% of American children's diet is ultra-processed. That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of them formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. Wow. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans aren't biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous in American processed foods. The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine, and our environment. Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors. America's puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900. Our country has the earliest puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning all of our children and our adults.
It is disgraceful that the Democrat Party is not talking about this, because this stuff that he is talking about affects the Black community in an exponential way. These young girls walk around here. First of all, they're already barely covered, little young teenagers. You think they're grown women because their breasts are so big and their butts are so big. And it's the reason why is because they're eating a bunch of junk full of hormones and chemicals that is progressing their puberty. I don't know how many people I know who say, oh, my daughter got her period around 9 years old, 10 years old. Well, it's because you keep feeding them a bunch of crap. The ingredients in these items are not the same as it was when we were younger or when our parents were younger, and they continue to feed them. Nobody's cooking anymore. And the Democrats don't talk about this because Biden had a bucket of chicken when he came to the Black people's house to talk about his policies. He didn't bring in a bucket of chicken. It wasn't home cooked. But this is what they do. They dance. They bring the chicken, and they think that's supposed to, get these votes.
Look, when I was growing up, and again, I'm certainly my aunts and uncles and my mother, their generations and before, even when people were on welfare, right? You only could buy whole foods with those, I guess, the food stamps or whatever. You could only buy whole foods. You couldn't buy the junk foods and stuff with that, with the welfare back then. But at the same time, people were cooking at home. There was someone at home cooking meals, and most of your meals came from home, right? every now and then you could go to McDonald's or, you know, get that bucket of chicken every now and then. It was not an everyday occurrence. So I know there are young children, black and white or whatever color, who are reaching puberty way early, too early. And not only that, when they reach the puberty early, you have physicians or pharmaceuticals that they're placed on to stop it. So now you have one door doing this, and you come in the back door, and these kids, their bodies and their minds are being overloaded with hormones, not just their natural hormones from their own biological changes, but then all of these synthetic ones. What do you think? We got kids on Adderall and all of these other psychotropic medications at younger and younger ages. Elementary school children being put on medications to keep them still. Well, if children in elementary school are not supposed to run around, who is? I mean, healthy children don't sit still.
No. But I have to disagree with you there. These kids are jacked up on artificial coloring and sweeteners.
That too
it makes them crazy.
Yeah.
This is especially bad for boys. It's especially bad for boys. But these parents continue to do it. And it's a cycle. We talked about this. So the Democrats and the left are pushing for the breakdown of the family. They don't want two-parent households. They got all these single moms. But what happens when you don't have two parents in a household? You can't cook home-cooked meals because you got to be at work. So if they're unable to cook these home-cooked meals, then they're buying junk. They're buying food out in the streets or whatever. And then the kids get addicted to the chemicals and the things within this food, and the cycle continues.
Yep.
They get fat. They get addicted to this nasty, terrible food. Well, it's not so much nasty. They get addicted to the terrible food. And then that fuels this whole idea of the pharmaceuticals and the artificial sweetener companies. And they just continue to line their pockets. And Black people, yes, I am saying Black people fall for this hook, line, and sinker.
Yep. Because they get free stuff.
Yeah, and this is something when I consider myself a liberal, this is something that was really a big issue for me. Like this, the health and the fact that the pharmaceutical companies are controlling us, and the government and the company and these corporations are working together to really control the population through food, through medication, and also through getting people addicted to this kind of foods. And then also, I guess, not allowing people to really take care of themselves. You know, people are not cooking for themselves. They're not growing their own food. And this is something the liberal people who were considered themselves liberals were really rallying for, like this idea of self-sufficiency and, you know, having healthy living, you know, organic foods. And where are they now? I mean, I hope that they're switching. I guess many of them switched to the Republican Party. And in terms of, that really spoke to me when he talked about children and how many of them are sick now with these chronic conditions. It is absolutely not normal, and people are not paying attention. The adults are not paying attention. They're not realizing where this is coming from. And, you know, I'm sure it's difficult to raise a child, but I've heard parents say, well, my child only eats chicken nuggets, so I only give him chicken nuggets. Like, no, that is not how you're supposed to take care of your child. You know, they have to have a balanced, healthy diet. Just because they're not eating something, well, then you got to work on it. You don't just give them poison.
They don't have the time. This is what I'm talking about. And not only that, but look what happened. So they're eating all this bad food. They're not exercising. The kids are getting obese and they're unhealthy. They then have a ton of chronic diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity in itself. And what happens? COVID hits. Of course, that community, the Black community, where a lot of these chronic diseases are prevalent, hits them the hardest, and the Democrats blame racism.
Absolutely.
They blame racism.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I so resonated with that. When RFK was talking about that part, I resonated because I know many people who are in the medical field, and from what I hear from them is that one of the main reasons obesity is a precursor, or I would say a significant contributor to many of the chronic diseases that the top 5 or 10 in America, maybe worldwide, but obesity. And what you have is this vicious cycle. The obesity will, contribute to diabetes. You need more insulin. Your body becomes insulin resistant. So you need even more insulin. And it's this vicious cycle. Not only that, even in the hospitals, as much as they try to give balanced meals, that's not the case in many times. It really is not so balanced. So then you have the litigation part. The medical people will try to educate the patients, right? But because of the lawyers and the threat of being sued, they go ahead and cave in because it's cheaper to cave in than it is to fight a lawsuit.
Yeah.
So it's all intertwined.
Yeah, President Trump was talking about that on his interview with Theo Vaughn. He was talking about how we've become such a litigious society. The largest lobby, he was saying right now, for these candidates is the lawyer lobby.
I think it was just last year, it may have been earlier this year. Again, you talk about things coming out to be true, or that was said to be true. Now they're proven wrong. The FDA, the food pyramid. The food pyramid, I mean, for years they go through iterations with the food pyramid. Then it was the My Plate, things like that. But for the most part, the food pyramid has been a mainstay. And look at the damage, if you will, it has contributed to for the American population. Most of the world does not eat. They don't eat as many grains like in the form that we eat them. I'll say that in the form that we eat them. They try to eat a lot of more fruits and vegetables and fresh foods, the meats, things like that. But our food pyramid, where is it coming from? A government organization put it out in the public, if you will, for the American consumption, and it's proving to be harmful.
Yeah, it has, especially if we are not active. Carbs are okay if you are being very active, and we have become such a sedentary society that the amount of carbs that are recommended and that many Americans eat are detrimental and again lead to diabetes. And I saw someone comment about how there's a correlation now between diabetes and dementia. So it's a cycle, and I'm so happy RFK Jr pointed it out, and now it's become a topic of discussion.